Thank you everyone for joining us. This is the first of our three-part panel series with patient and public partners. This session is pre-assessment of needs for inclusive online engagement. I'm Trish Roach. I'm a knowledge broker in patient engagement and knowledge translation at the George and Fahey Center for Healthcare Innovation, or CHI. This panel is part of our Patient and Public Engagement Lunchtime Learning Series, which is a self-approved group learning Section 1 activity, and that's as defined by the Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons of Canada, and it's eligible for 1 credit hour. We will be recording this panel and we'll share it on CHI's YouTube channel, and we'll provide the link to that in the chat and at the end. And how this panel will work. So we do have a lot of people registered. We will not be able to monitor and see the raise hand feature that Zoom has. So we're asking that if you want to submit a question or a comment, use the chat box. Your audio and video are, or at least your audio, is automatically muted by the moderators. And so towards the end, when we have the discussion, if you do want to speak directly to one of the panelists or one of our team members, let us know in the chat box and we'll try and do those in the best order that we can. So I'll do some introductions, then panelists will have a chance to share their perspectives on assessing needs for inclusive engagement. And we will share comments and questions during the discussion and Q&A session. Okay. There we go. So I'd first like to acknowledge here in Winnipeg, we are on Treaty 1 land, home of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. We respect the treaties that were made on these territories. We acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past. We recognize the ongoing present-day colonial violence faced by Indigenous people within our systems and institutions, and we dedicate ourselves to moving forward in partnership in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. Our lovely patient engagement team at the Center for Healthcare Innovation includes Carolyn Shimon, who is on video. She is our patient and public engagement lead at CHI. She's probably familiar to many of you. Ogai Sherazoi, a fellow knowledge broker at CHI. Hi, Ogai. And myself, Trish Roach. We work collaboratively with researchers, clinicians, and students to support the meaningful and active involvement of patients, caregivers, families, communities, and members of the public. Collectively, we refer to as patient and public partners in health research and health systems projects and programs. This includes direct support for development and conduct of engagement activities with diverse groups. It includes facilitating relationships and developing and delivering resources, training, and education. Our conflicts of interest, the PE team are paid employees of the Center for Healthcare Innovation, and both Angela and Maggie, our lovely patient and public partner panelists, are members of CHI's Patient and Public Engagement Collaborative Partnership, and we have no other conflicts to disclose. And so without further ado, I will introduce our first panelist. Oops, I went too far. There we go. Angela, if you want to just give us a wave on video. Her background is in science. Angela immigrated to Canada from Ireland. She has a master's in biochemistry and has worked for many years, or did work for many years as a workplace educator in various industries. She has also taught internationally trained professionals as an English as a second language instructor. And currently at Red River College, Angela is an assessment program analyst, where she develops assessments and then implements customized solutions to enable students to succeed in their courses. In her spare time, she loves to bike, read, travel, and debate politics. And so I'll just introduce them one at a time so that you know who's talking right before they begin. And Angela, you are free to share your thoughts, which are, we have some pointers shown on the screen, so go right ahead.
Hi, good afternoon, and thank you so much for the opportunity to discuss this. If there is an overarching theme that I would say is so critical in terms of overall patient engagement. It's the sense of belongingness. And this is particularly pertinent now when we are physically so isolated. But how do we, as a society, and how do we, as people engaged in patient engagement, foster a sense of belongingness within our communities? So as I have been thinking a lot about this in the past several months, actually, both in my role at Red River College, but also in my role involved here in patient engagement. So one piece that's absolutely critical at the very, very beginning is to consider the level of access that patients have for the actual access that they have to technology. This is very, very important. And what has been very, very interesting for me as a person who works quite extensively with students, millennials in particular, is how many of them simply don't have regular access to a computer. And it may not always be the case that they have access to a cell phone. I'm thinking in particular patients who may be located in remote or northern areas. This is absolutely a significant consideration in terms of this. Secondly, to also consider that some people we are now realizing have either very, very poor or no Wi-Fi at all. You know, our coffee shops, bless them, have wonderful access, but clearly right now they are closed. So this is also something that needs to be considered for if you are looking to engage with patients in an online situation. The next piece that I would suggest is that in many cases, people simply do not have a quiet place where they can actually attend meetings. We are clearly, so many of us now are working and living from home, and very often it's very, very difficult for people to actually attend meetings. And then coupled with that, you've also got the juggle in terms of, my son needs to be working on homework and my daughter would like to FaceTime, etc., etc. So there's clearly the need to balance that. So it's not only a physical quiet space, but it's also an online quiet space where the connectivity can actually work. One critical piece that I've come to realize is very, very important is that many people do not want to see where they live, do not want to be seen where they live. So what I mean by this, clearly in my background here, you have a sense of the space in which I live, the space in which, and what comes with that is an entire economic picture. In many cases, we have heard of cases where students have not been willing to participate in online learning simply because they do not want their instructors to know where they live. They also don't want their classmates to know where they live. It's also the same thing in a patient engagement situation where patients may not want others to know where they actually live. As somebody so wisely pointed out, talking about their 15-year-old high school teacher, high school student, that it's like, I wouldn't ask my teacher into my house under the best of circumstances anyway. So why would I be comfortable now? So that's really an important piece to consider. The other aspect, so we're taking about the physical, considering the physical aspects in terms of access to technology. The other piece is having old technology that necessarily, and you can't download Zoom, you can't use the program simply won't work on older computers. Again, I'm thinking more of perhaps older people who may not are not comfortable in terms of downloading, not familiar with updates, etc., etc. That's something that needs to be considered. And then, even if you can download them, just getting comfortable, whether you're using Zoom or WebEx or Big Blue Button or Google Hangout, Google Meet. It takes time to get comfortable with using such technologies. And I'll talk a little bit further about that afterwards. The other piece is also people simply just run out of data in terms of the use of their actual systems. They may be accessing on cell phones and simply run out of data and hence will not be able to participate in meetings. So in summary, as we begin, check in with people. Have they access to a computer? How about their internet conductivity? Do they have a quiet place to meet? Are they comfortable with meeting online? One suggestion that I have is if, for example, we are on Zoom, instruct people in terms of how do you put up the I think it's called a green curtain. How do you put up the scenes so that people may feel a little bit more comfortable? I liken it to wearing a school uniform. Then everybody looks the same, and it's going to minimize those types of biases, those those biases that we inherently will bring in terms of our discussions. Again, ask if people have the equipment, and then look. Ask about comfort level around using online meeting tools. The next part of the discussion focused on safety and confidentiality, and this is important, critical, because in many cases patients may not want roommates, family members, or partners to know that they are a patient who lives with a particular condition or is a patient, etc., etc. So again, we're looking in terms of the person's space and how that's so important in terms of all of this. So as I have mentioned, so safety and confidentiality is really, really important. And again, with the work that I do at River College, we do a lot of discussion around creating safe spaces, but the term more commonly used now is actually brave spaces. So moving forward, part of what we need to think about is how do we create brave spaces online to enable engagement? That's really, really critical for us to think about. So part of it is when we look at people's abilities, so we all have differing abilities. We need to take this into consideration. It may be closed captioning. It may be closed captioning of information. It may be getting permission to record the meetings and having the closed captioning so that people can go back over and review the information and different things like that. But there is also a level of confidence that's needed to navigate an online there's a level of confidence needed to navigate online situations. I don't need to tell you, we miss the subtleties, we miss the nuances when we're in a face-to-face situations. We've all encountered situations in which, you know, asking the questions could be perceived as being interruptions. But if we haven't sort of set in place protocols and awareness around this, then the nuances are going to be lost, and people again are going to feel lost, and that sense of belongingness is not going to be there. So what has been very insightful for me is that despite people's familiarity with social media, tech savviness, being in an online meeting is very, very different, and at times very, very difficult. It was very, very insightful for me to be participating in the classroom with students and to be very quickly move into an online situation and to see the level of anxiety for students. So the other piece is also just to be aware that people may manifest their lack of belongingness, their lack of confidence in terms of, you know, I can't attend the sessions because the time doesn't work for me. Perhaps they are working on shifts, or they're not responding to emails, they're not comfortable with the technology. And the other part to really consider is the level of overall stress that we as a society as a whole are experiencing right now. Last but not least, I would strongly encourage developing protocols and ground rules for successful virtual engagement. One piece I've particularly appreciated with our PE team is flexibility. Absolutely critical in terms of this. I've always appreciated how they always follow up with materials. Again, as I said, if you've recorded meetings, they can be sent out at another time when people can review on their own time. But I think it's also important as well in terms of negotiating the protocols, in terms of who is the host, what is their role, what is their what is it that they do, how are questions going to be answered, how are they going to be taken, different things like that. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Angela. So if you do have questions in the meantime, go ahead and put those in the chat directly or to everyone. And I'm going to now introduce our second panelist, Meggie. Meggie Haddad. She immigrated to Canada as a Syrian refugee. She is enrolled in conflict resolution studies and human rights at the University of Winnipeg. Meggie is an advocate for newcomer, immigrant, and refugee youth and aims to give back to her community. She is the co-chair of the Newcomer Youth Council of Winnipeg, the goal of which is to bring attention to the voices of newcomer youth and their needs. Meggie, welcome to the panel, and thank you for taking the time to speak with us. And I'll give you about 10 minutes to touch on the topics, which I will put up on the screen for you. There we go, and I will mute myself and unmute you.
Hello everyone, thank you so much for having me. I'm here to talk, to bring up the perspective about the newcomer and refugee in specific, but that does not mean I'm bringing all the perspectives. Every individual has a different experience, so we have to be mindful of that. Refugees experience already has a lot of stress, and especially in culture and language barriers, and that's we experience in face-to-face meetings or when we see people. And sometimes when we meet with people, we require to act or perform to deliver the meaning of a word, and same thing with the other person. Sometimes they have to act for us a scene so we can get it, and so that scenario would be so different and difficult when we are an online meeting, virtual, or also like just a call. Our We are not really like confident in our in the language, so that would be like increasing and increasing during the virtual and online meeting. For the accessing to technology and the skills, many of us have living years and years in camps with no going to regular schools. A lot of us cannot write on our own languages, so it would be so difficult for us to use like a technology and in a different language. That does not mean that all of us does not know how to use the technology. So please don't have the assumption that, oh, they are a refugee, they don't use technology, or they are refugee, they have to use technology. It's all different from a person to a person. For the technology and skills, like I have an example. My mom she goes to Red River College to learn English as a second language. And now she's attending online meeting, for online classes, and she actually has now more difficulty to how can I attend the online classes. More it's more difficult than actually attending or learning a new language. So a lot of times she needs a help, and there's me and my sister around the house who can help her, but that's not the case for every newcomer or every refugee here. Also, the accessing cultural differences, culture difference is really complicated topic, because not all refugees have same culture. Not all, even in the same country, there is the Syrian culture, yes, but there is also many diversity in the same country. So we have to be mindful of that and mindful of how diverse is the culture is. Many women, probably they are not really comfortable to share their appears on virtual or online meetings, or anything, because many of us has a bad experience of sharing our pictures or our online videos with different people. So we have to be mindful of that as well. And how can we deal with that? It's just ask, how what's the best way for you to be comfortable with us? What's the best way we can communicate, over a text, over a phone, or over a video call? For the youth perspective, we Angela has mentioned before, how people there is the brave space that people have to have the confidence, or not have they need confidence to share their space with other people. And that would be more with youth and teenager as well. I remember I was not comfortable to share my home in Syria with some of my others classmates. So that would be more difficult here with sharing it with for example, Canadian. I already have that gap between me and them. So inviting them to my home, it would be a little bit difficult. And that even if they say, oh, I don't care, just I don't care where do you live, but I care where do I live. So that's the thing. Also not everyone is comfortable with the apps that we are using. I know myself and my friends, we usually talk over Instagram, for example, or FaceTime, or WhatsApp. But these formal that needs you feel you have to sit and talk with other person, that would not be comfortable with some of the youth as well. Also the time, our schedule has changed 100%. I used to wake up every day around 8 or 9 o'clock. Now I'm not waking up at 8 o'clock. I don't have classes at 8 o'clock. Why should I? So scheduling meeting at early morning, or during it's not making sense for, especially for you, like I think for youth, because there's like that we don't have to follow schedule, like that's the idea. We're like, and the ones who are not adult yet, some of them, so I would not take the full 10 minutes, but all what I can say is just like ask questions, be open to ask questions, questions in order to learn, in order to get the answers, and at the end we want all to feel comfortable and to have the confidence. Yeah, that's it. Thank you so much.
Great, thanks so much, Maggie. So we will have time for discussion. I'm thinking before we open that up, maybe our PE team can help kind of facilitate and get things moving with the conversation. I'm going to put Carolyn first. I'm trying to unmute her. She won't let me.
Oh, thank you so much, Angela and Maggie, for your insight. I think it was really helpful for everyone to hear those pieces. I'm thinking about some of the questions that you brought up, that you started to bring up, and some of the perspectives around belongingness and how important that is when interacting, and the fact that it's the context, it's a specific time where things are very uncertain as well. I was wondering if maybe you could talk a little bit more about how engaging during this period of time can be difficult as well, with the pandemic and with that uncertainty, and how that might impact some of the interactions. Who might?
Question is directed towards me.
Sure.
I think what's very important, and again, one of the pieces that like where I work is to be informed. There's a whole awareness around trauma-informed pedagogy and the impact that this is happening, that this is having on people, and the impact that it's having at a neurological level, and how it manifests itself in terms of people's reaction or lack of reaction or inconsistent reaction to various situations. So that's something that we have to be aware of. The person may say, yes, I will be available to participate in the meeting. Yes, I know how to do it. I'll be there at the Zoom meeting, and then not show up. And very often it is as a result of the trauma that people are experiencing right now. So that's something that we, as a society as a whole, not only in the classroom, but also involved in our engagement with patients, just to be aware of it. And the other part is from our perspective, not to take it personally, that this is something that is completely unprecedented in our times. So that's what I would suggest in terms of that, Carolyn.
And Maggie, from the youth perspective as well, it must be tough because your schedules are so different now and everything's changing, and that must impact engagement as well, eh?
Yeah, for sure. Also, like the sense of belonging that Angela talked about. There is like like newcomers don't have, like not all the newcomers have the fully sense of belonging to the society itself. So engaging through online too, that will affect that as well. So we have to be mindful of that.
That's great. Yes, that's such an important part of the puzzle of belongingness. And I can only imagine if you just arrived in Canada and trying to engage this way must be additionally stressful.
Okay, so, I have one question, but maybe let's just hear from Ogai as well before we go to those. So I'm going to mute you, Carolyn, and Ogai, I've requested to unmute you, I think.
Okay.
There we go.
Thank you so much, Angela and Maggie. It's so important that when we engage, we have to do a pre-assessment of where folks are at and how do we set up our meetings in a way that they can authentically engage, feel safe, feel comfortable, be in that brave space, and not have any feelings of shame that will impact the way they engage. And Maggie, thank you for bringing up the perspective of when we say the term newcomers, we lump some and we think it's a group of people that are similar, but they're not. There's a lot of experiences. And when we are working across cultures, even Maggie and I are both immigrants to Canada, but we definitely practice different cultures. So Maggie, cultural humility is a huge, important aspect in engagement to ask those questions. What would be the safest way for a researcher or a student to ask how can they make sure that they're respecting cultures?
I think like as I said it, like when someone asks a question in order to learn and to know, the tone that they are asking is different than someone who's asking question just because they have to ask, or just be like, oh, they told me to ask, so I'm asking. So just like to set up your mind is, I'm now asking questions so I can be more educated. That will bring a new different perspective, and it will be in a manner of respect to the other person and to the other person cultures. So
thank you. That's such an important point. I think the whole cultural humility piece is all about sharing a little bit about yourself and then being open-minded and asking to learn from them. Let them teach you and guide you of what they identify their culture and values to be. So,
yeah.
I'm really curious to hear from our audiences. I know that this is such interesting times, and I'm sure you have projects and you're probably thinking of how do I engage in a way that is inclusive. So do we have any questions from our lovely audience?
We do. So I had a private message question from Thomas. He asked, what about, and you kind of touched on this, but what about things like language barriers and preparing for that, and like translation? Any suggestions around that so far? I think, yeah, Maggie could speak to that, but maybe Angela too, in your experience with Red River, if you've used any of those kind of tools to help with communication.
Not directly, because our language of instruction is in fact English. But what's been very interesting is that we were very, very concerned about the level of participation of second or additional language learners in the online classes, and actually it has exceeded expectations. And when we simply asked, again, as Maggie so eloquently said, in an appropriate tone, why? In a Zoom situation, it's actually very, very clear. And extraneous noises and other distractions are not an issue in the classroom. And it's actually been a little easier for people to actually have, to be able to participate and engage, and it's actually easier for them. I'm just also thinking about another situation where we don't have translation services or anything like that, but another opportunity that we do have is that if there were slides available through MDR, you can certainly do slides and incorporate closed captioning on those slides. And again, that for again, actually for everybody is of benefit, because sometimes we don't quite hear what somebody says, we miss something, and if it's clearly written there, it just makes it a whole lot easier for everybody.
For sure. And did you have anything, thoughts from you, Maggie, on translation, language barriers, things that people can do to help assess that ahead of time?
I know, like, because of our current, because of our current difficult time, the funds are cutting, like, for the organizations, and they are actually decreasing the amount that, like, for interpreters or translation needed, and that actually so unfortunate for people who actually need it, and sometimes we need it more than the like the face-to-face, as I said before. So yeah, but like, if the always ask if the other person needs a translation, or are they comfortable with a particular translation, because many of us translate among our communities, and that won't be comfortable for everyone, because everyone knows everyone, and not everyone feels comfortable to share their privacy with someone who they know. So.
For sure. So yeah, it sounds like having some visual aids would be helpful as well. I would have liked us to be able to do closed captioning this time. Usually that's me though, so sorry, I dropped the ball on that one, everyone. Another question we have from one of our attendees: are there differences between engaging one-on-one or as groups? And I guess they're talking about virtually. Whoever wants to take this.
I think there is, during the amount of how comfortable is the other person, and what's the topic that has been discussed during this meeting. Does it require to be only one-to-one, or actually a group of people would be much better, and how the other person feel about it. Like some discussion, I really prefer to be just with the other person, and other, no, I feel more confident and stronger when I see other people or other youth in the meeting. So it depends, I think. I don't know.
And again, it's probably about asking people what they prefer before you go into the meeting, right?
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Another question we had: any suggestions on how you might create a sense of belonging with people who are new to online forums?
Welcome to my world at Red River. So I think part of what needs to be done initially is, I think a telephone call is part of sort of the initial building the connection, building the sense of belongingness, making the connection with that particular person. There are also opportunities in terms of video links, providing links to resources, and also different types of situations like that. I think we cannot underestimate the importance of the human voice, that human connection piece in the midst of all of this technology. It's really, really important. It's really important at the best of times. It's even more critical now. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, providing some resources ahead of time. Mm-hmm. Or even, like, I know you two are not new to online forums or using Zoom, but we did ahead of time have a pre-meeting for this to kind of discuss how it would go and get everyone comfortable with being in front of the camera and speaking.
Yes.
So that kind of preparation definitely
absolutely
helps.
Yes, yes, yeah.
We have someone from the attendees asking, they say, I am fairly new to doing online research, so can you elaborate on the term put up seams? And they say, I think this was the term, and I'm not sure if I caught that. Does anyone, maybe they can elaborate in the chat?
Mm-hmm.
Put up seams, I'm not sure. I didn't catch that anywhere. I'll wait and see if they can maybe
Clarify.
give some context here.
Oh,
Referring to Zoom backgrounds, I think.
yes.
Oh, like a scene, maybe. Scenic.
Yes, scene. Yes.
Right, so I think you were talking about, and that's kind of privacy, confidentiality, right?
Yes.
I think it was you, Angela, who suggested in our practice meeting, people even having banners in the background. If you don't know how to use the virtual backgrounds, something to allow yourself to have some privacy. I mean, I myself have the virtual background, so my partner doesn't have to be in a public meeting with me. Okay, another question we have from Lisa Ridgway. What about institutions, universities, and support units providing web access for those that don't have it? Should future budgets be drafted with virtual access for all in mind?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I don't know if this is necessarily a patient partner topic to address. Right. I mean, I think it's going to have to be if we're talking about funding engagement and providing supports, providing resources. We have, even in our own support unit, we have a Preparing for Research Engagement Award, the PrEP Award. And so one of our researchers that has this award has actually used part of their budget to provide a tablet for one of their patient partners to be able to review documents and connect remotely. So definitely, and I think that's something obviously not at the forefront currently, but it's going to have to be soon, because I don't think it's going to be going back to complete normal the way things were before, right? That there's going to be a new normal. So it's definitely something we're going to have to work on.
Absolutely. Yep.
Another attendee said, Angela mentioned at the beginning of her talk that everyone has the ability to connect. Lack of computers, cell phone, Wi-Fi, and other kinds of internet connections. How do we connect with them? Oh, so it's not everyone has the ability to connect. So how are we overcoming those kinds of barriers?
It's a good question. So, like old-fashioned teleconferencing, it may also be an option in this particular case. It could make for a very, very isolated situation, though. It would be, difficult. I mean, it can be done. But that's sort of what immediately comes to mind in terms of that.
I mean, same. I've definitely had some clients who I've tried to connect with via WebEx or Zoom, and they say, I can't do it. So I said, okay, let's get on a phone call and we'll discuss there. And yeah, I remember the MPN had a webinar on Monday, and they were discussing about some other methods that don't have that, it's not that face-to-face real-time connection, but for people, who don't have a stable internet connection, which I mean is me right now too, right? Having like Google Documents or using online asynchronous focus groups, so not at the same time, where people, it's kind of like a message board where people can go when they have a good connection, or not having to actually use video and audio to discuss, but maybe back and forth chat kind of thing. So I think those are some other options as well. What else do we have? Nika Claprat. says, we are currently trying to engage with a new group of patient partners over Zoom, some of whom are living with vision loss. In terms of conversation, this has not been too much of a barrier, their words, not ours, but we plan to start trying to implement PowerPoint type presentations such as these to help share information and provide training. Are there any tools that have been known to help with this over an online platform? Maybe Angela from the education background.
Two thoughts come to mind in terms of that. I would suggest connecting with the CNIB or assistive learning technologies in at the university. Yeah, that's what immediately comes to mind in terms of that. There is, I believe, CNIB advocates the use of, I think the name of the program is JAWS, which allows for people to see in these circumstances. I stand corrected on the name, but I believe that it certainly can be done.
Yeah, and I think having those visual aids, large print on the screen can be helpful as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Carolyn and Ogai, if you want to jump in at any time, I don't know if you're able to unmute yourselves. You can't? You can't unmute your own. I'm sorry.
Hi, I was just going to say as well, I know with the Canadian Centre for Disability Studies, whenever we do have PowerPoints and we have people participating who may have vision impairments, it's super important if you have any type of image or anything like that, that you do a description of that image while you're talking and describe it. So there's a lot of kind of closed captioning, essentially describing what you're presenting for everyone to be able to understand when you're doing those types of presentations. I know it's super important.
Okay, Martin asks, do you ask participants to do any pre-work to explore online engagement, any tools or frequently asked questions to help people understand how to use the online engagement tools? Oh, I want to develop something like that so badly. Yes. I mean, we currently don't have this. We've been connecting with patient and public partners more of a one-on-one basis. To determine their needs and what they have access to and their level of comfort with Zoom. I know in terms of using the program, we have chosen Zoom because it is pretty user-friendly as opposed to some other programs. But we don't have any FAQs or pre-work. Definitely, we should though. It's something I think that would be valuable.
It's a very good suggestion.
Anybody have anything else to add on that? We haven't had time to do anything yet. Do you, Martin? Please share if you do. Yes, he says yes. Okay.
Okay, great.
I'll have to get him to share something. Leanne asks, how do you accommodate for compensating for people's time, honorariums? Do people account for this during pre-work? So I can say it is in our compensation for our patient partners, we do include not just the time they spend in the video call or on the Zoom, but also prep work that is included. So I would say absolutely yes. I don't know if anyone else has thoughts around that. It's important to consider for any type of patient and public engagement, even before using Zoom, right? If people have to spend a lot of time traveling, you know, reimbursing people for things like parking. So it might be, and I don't know how that works in the virtual online engagement world in terms of paying for internet. These are new situations that we're still figuring out how to navigate. So I think it comes down to really asking patient partners if their needs are covered.
Yep.
Okay, and Mike Warren asks, as an option, could the patient use an advocate or trusted friend to speak for them or make them feel comfortable? Maggie, do you have any thoughts on this? I know you mentioned translation between communities, right? Or within communities.
Yeah, I just like have like a thought in my head is like, are they actually comfortable, and why they need trusted friend to speak up on themselves? That the question that we need to ask, I think. Like, why do I need friends to talk about something private to me? So yeah, just like I'm not really sure about it, because I'm not really sure, like for example, families or family friends in like community like mine is always close, like, and friendship and family relationships are really valuable, and like we assume it's like trusted thing. But is it actually for me as a person? Are they actually a close friends for me, or is that how the culture of me is like, or is that only a cultural thing? So we have like we should like we should actually understand if they are actually trusted friend and they need them, and why, if they need them, why do they? So
Yeah, I would like to reiterate what Maggie just said. It's important to ask why. It may be initially a person may need some help in terms of navigating their way through a Zoom meeting and not understanding, for example, all of the icons that are at the bottom or whatever. How and that might be the case, but I would agree with Maggie to help to understand why that other person is there. Yep.
Go ahead, Ogai.
Thank you. And then there's also that other side that sometimes people need a supportive person to be with them when they're in a meeting. So allowing space for that too, but still having that conversation of, would you like someone to come with you? Would that make you feel comfortable? So having the option and allowing the person to choose.
And I did get a private message. Someone mentioned that BC Patient Voices has an intro to Zoom webinar for patient partners, and I did look it up quickly. I couldn't find a direct link or anything, but that might be something to consider, especially if you're working in a support unit or somewhere that you know, when if you're helping to support patient and public engagement, thinking about delivering that kind of content. It's now on our to-do list, PE team. And then we also have a comment from Thomas who says, this is a good time for researchers and others to advocate or provide their voice to push governments to ensure the province or Canada that everyone is connected to media like everyone in the South, as most Indigenous communities do not have access to the internet, for sure, and I agree. I'm not sure, did we have any other comments anyone wants to make? Ogai or Carolyn, do you have anything you wanted to add? Nobody wanted to directly speak up out of the audience. That's fine. I don't mind sharing questions. Oh, Ogai, I think you're on now.
Okay, just going back to the belonging question that someone had asked previously, how do we create a sense of belonging virtually? But before setting a meeting, just even having a phone call to see how people are doing really starts that relationship building, the humanistic side of trust building, and creating that level of trust before just allowing people to jump in Zoom. And I feel that's where people start to sense that there's a level of care and they get the sense of belonging. So sometimes we don't have the capacity. I know there a lot of researchers are busy, but taking 2 minutes out of our day to make that connection can go a long way for the people that we want to reach.
And if I could add, Ogai, to that, I think what's very, very important is to continue that connection, not to make the assumption that because, oh, well, I checked in with them at the last meeting. No, it needs to continue. And Carolyn, you laugh at, the end of each meeting. Carolyn always does a check-in with us. It's really important in terms of that. So you're checking out, you're checking in, but you're also checking out. You're transitioning the person back into their regular life. And that's really, really important and cannot be underestimated.
Yeah, I was just about to mention that, Angela, that when you do have meetings, building in that balance, right? Because you may be engaging around a research question, but you're also connecting with people. And so, yeah, I always do laugh. I do a wrap up with everyone. When we do meetings, we have kind of intense conversations, and then we close out by going around and debriefing about it, but also coming up with one good thing that we're going to do for ourselves tonight. So something personally that you're going to do for yourselves, and just building in that. And with our group as well, we ended up having a separate meeting just to check in and talk to one another about how we've been doing. And so making sure that there's space for both the engagement around research stuff, but also that connection piece, so that our relationship keeps building, is so important.
All right, that was an excellent discussion. We are about 2 minutes away from the top of the hour. So before everyone leaves, I would love for you to stay in touch. If you'd like to learn more about what we do in patient engagement, or check out some recordings of our previous lunchtime learning sessions, you can find those on our website, chimb.ca. You can find us on Twitter with that same handle, or our blog, Knowledge Nudge, on Twitter. We do have a Patient Engagement 101 series, some features of knowledge brokers, all kinds of great content on PE and knowledge translation. We're also on Facebook, CHI Manitoba, and you can email us directly, or if you'd like to connect with our Patient and Public Engagement Collaborative Partnership, that is the email we'll use to connect and share opportunities or questions or information with them. We will be sending out a link to people who registered to do a quick evaluation so we can continue to improve these sessions. I think this went pretty well for a first time. And speaking of which, we will have a second session. This is scheduled for June 10th, 12 to 1 p.m. Central Time, featuring a few more of our lovely collaborative partnership members, who I see two of in the chat here. Hi guys, Rashid and Thomas, and then Abu will join us as well. You can register for that using the bit.ly link at the bottom. And yeah, thank you everyone for joining us. Thanks for the lovely discussion. That was absolutely great. The recording is available on will be available on our YouTube. And Mercy has put the info for the next session in the chat. Yeah, if you want to get a hold of us, again, chipartners@umanitoba.ca. Thanks everyone for coming, and take care and do something nice for yourself today, and have a good day and stay safe. Thank you.